everyone, I'm Monica from Moreish Cakes, and today we're making wafer paper flowers. And just to take you through some of the materials that we will be using today, I'm using more curl. I have some wafer paper from over the top. We also have more hardened sticky, which is the glue that we use. The wafer paper absolutely loves it. I have a little tool here. You could use a bamboo skewer, but I find the more pointy is definitely the most handiest for it. And of course, I have pre-cut some of our wafer paper petals just to make our life a little bit easier. But you can cut these out either with a punch, or if you have a Cricut, or even just get a glass or a cup as a guide. And you want maybe 2 or 3 sizes at the very most. So I'm using maybe 4 centimetre, 6 centimetre and 7 to 8 centimetre rounds for today. Now, just talking very, very quickly about more curl, the product actually comes clear and you colour it yourself. So ultimately, if you do want white roses, you would just keep it clear, or you can decant the product into separate bottles and add in the colour of your choice. My preference is Sweet Sticks. It works incredibly well, but any gel colour will do, bar the Colour Mill Aqua, which actually breaks down the product. You can also use your luster dusts or petal dust, and that works incredibly well. So into the bottle, give it a shake each time you want to use it. So here for the colours that we're actually using today, I have the pastel pink with a drop of brown. I'm using the purple with a little bit of pink because I like to mix my colours up a little bit, and just straight up yellow. I also have a little bit of a green which has some petal dust in there. So let's get started on actually making the wafer paper petals. It doesn't matter what side you actually spray the product onto the wafer paper. The ultimate result is the same, but the most important thing for you to remember is when you place your wafer paper down to dry, it needs to be the rough side of the paper upwards. So the wafer paper has 2 sides, a smooth side and a rough side. Rough side is always up. So I'm going to start at the moment with some of the larger petals. I'm going to place these down so that, again, it makes absolutely no difference. And now I'm going to start spraying. Now I'm using a baking rack today. If you've got stainless steel benches, they're ideal, but don't do this process on your granite bench tops or your marble bench tops, because the colour will absorb into the surface. So have a protective layer of some kind. So I've sprayed one side, and as you can see, the colour is very, very subtle. And then you need to flip them over, and this is where this little tool comes in handy, because at this stage the wafer paper is actually quite brittle. A bit more colour on there. Now I have a glove on only because I don't feel like having cake decorator fingers and different colours, but you can do it with your hands and then wash your hands, the colour will come off. Now I've added a little bit of yellow because I do all the colouring at this point in time rather than having to petal dust or airbrush my petals later. I do it all now. So now when I lift them off, I'm just double checking that this is the rough side, and it goes onto a cake cooling rack. Ideally, you want a fine weave like this one, and make sure that they're not touching. So I'll do a couple more. Now this process for them to dry can take anything from 5 minutes to half an hour, depending on the humidity and the air that you have at home. And if you're thinking, oh, I'll run the aircon, just wait for the product to absorb first, and you can see them start to have a bit of motion before you crank the aircon to dry them quicker. So I'll just speed this up a little bit. I'm just adding a little bit of purple around the edges. And by using your fingers to go around the edges, you're actually bringing in a little bit more colour onto the edges. So this is the next size. And then we'll do a couple of the small ones. Always give it a shake between. I'm keeping my hands here only to make sure that I don't have overspray on their bench. Now I always say don't wipe down your benches after you've finished if you're going to do more of them, because the more colour you have on your bench, the more natural the petals are going to look. So these are not about creating botanicals, these are about creating fast, pretty little wafer paper flowers that you can use on your cakes, especially if you're a time-poor baker like myself. All right, now At this point in time, they're going to take a little while to activate. Again, anything from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. My suggestion is don't leave them, because you might have a process line working, is to keep an eye on them, because they'll start to stick to the cooling rack. And at that point in time, you just want to make sure with your handy tool, you just lift the edges to make sure they're not sticking and that they're actually curling up the way that you want them. So we'll let these happen. And I've got some I have already prepared for you, so I'm going to grab them. So as you can see at the moment, some of them are just starting to curl up. Now I've got some that I had prepared earlier for you, but for these ones here, you'll start to find that the edges will stick to the cooling rack. At this point in time, you just want to lift them to make sure that the edges don't catch, because if they catch, they won't curl up. So I'm just going to quickly move these, and then we're going to move on to the next process. And these will dry as I'm starting to build the wafer paper flower. So while these are drying, and as you can see, they're curling up really, really well, I've got these ones here that have already dried to the stage that I want them to. So what we're going to do is I've got our more hardened sticky glue here. And as we know, the enemy of wafer paper is moisture. So the thicker the glue, the better. And this one is, you'll see here how thick it actually is. I'm going to use that one. I'm actually going to put just a little bit on the bench, and I'm going to draw from that rather than stick my paintbrush into the glue, because I'll contaminate it and I want it to last longer. Now with the petals at this stage, what we want to do is actually cup them. So you'll have some petals that won't have curled very much, and you want to put these aside because they're going to be your buds. So what you'd like to do with these ones is just snip them in half. I'm just going to select a couple of them that haven't curled too much, and as I said, they'll be the center. You only need maybe 2 or 3 at the very most. I'm going to be fussy now about my petals, aren't I? There we go, that'll do. So they're the centers. And then for the rest of them, select a petal. For example, like this one's got this beautiful little curl. Give it a snip. And with your brush and a little bit of glue, you're just going to place a little bit of glue there and just overlap a little bit. So what ends up happening is that you form the shape of the petal so it looks like a natural petal. And we're going to go ahead and do all of those so they're ready to go, and then we'll build that little rose together. So I'll see you in a couple of moments. All right, we have cupped all of our little petals, and the other ones are drying really, really nicely. So we've got a bit of curl happening. So I have a little bit of that glue, and I have a styrofoam bud. You can make it edible by using a gum paste one, or marshmallows or Rice Krispie treats. Now you've got those petals that you originally just cut in half. We're going to add on some glue, and the idea is that we want to wrap that center bit so that you can't see the styrofoam. So I'll just need 4 to start with. Just waiting for that glue to activate. And at this point in time, I'm looking to have the petal about 1 centimetre above. And it doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to cover the center bit, so that when you look inside the rose, you're not seeing styrofoam or marshmallow. There's the first one. And now we're just going to wrap it around as if we're making a bud. So always with just a little bit of glue. And with each petal, we're going to stick it along, halfway along the last petal. And I've got 1 petal left off because we're going to tuck the last petal we put on, like so, over the first petal. Oh, sorry, under the first petal. A little bit of glue. And to be honest with you, that's the bud done. How fast was that? Now, the next ones, I'm going to make a little bit more of an open rose. So I have the medium-sized petals here cupped. And all you want to do at this point in time is, on the bottom half of those petals, you're going to place the glue. I'm not using a lot of it. You can always add glue. You just can't take it away. You don't want a floppy petal. So I probably need between 3 and 4. And people always ask, how many petals? Just let the rose tell you what it wants. Just run with it. Trust me. Trust the process. All right, so the first one, a little bit of glue just around the edge. And at this point in time, it's going to start looking really natural and organic. So attaching that first petal. Take another one halfway along the first petal. Add in the second petal, a little bit of glue. Next petal, halfway along the last petal. See, this one needed 4 petals, not 3. But sometimes they just need the 3. I think I'll use this one here. I'm just going to tuck that petal in underneath that first petal. Now if you notice, I'm just using the tips of my fingers. I never touch the top part. Wow, look at that. That's already starting to bloom. And then we'll just move on to the larger size petals. Same process again. Always watching your heights as well, so you're not placing them too high over the bud. I'm just selecting the petals that I want at this stage. So I'm looking for a certain look. And I'll probably need between 4 and 5. A little bit of glue on the rose. Again, tips of the fingers. If you notice, I am barely touching the wafer paper to it and it's attaching. We need just one more petal. How's that working out? Gotta say, I love wafer paper. I'm very obsessed. Where were we? There. We're just going to pop that last one into there. And we've got one more row. So now we've got like a semi-bloom of the rose happening. And those little pops of yellow and purple are working really, really well. For the next ones, I'm barely going to touch them to the bottom because I want the rose to fan out just a little bit more. So I'm using some of these larger petals. I'm going to work upside down. It also stops me fussing with my rose. So I'm just going to touch these here. Like so. Because I want it to look like a natural bloom. These are the fastest, lightest and easiest wafer paper roses you can make. There we go. How good does that look? Now we do have a couple of the little curled up petals that are here. And if you want something that does look a little bit more organic, this is like a pro tip for you, right? This is a cheeky extra little bit. We're going to add a little bit of glue on the bottom. Doesn't have to be a lot. And then just select the petals that you like. So these are the time that you would use the ones that have curled up the most. Just for a little bit something different, all you need to do is just touch them on the bottom and allow them to hang down a little bit. And it gives it that little bit more of a natural look. Let's go with this one here. Because they're still soft, you can still move them a little bit. I want it to look like the rose is naturally blooming. And maybe this one here. And that's it. I'm going to stop there. Bend that little wire a little bit so it looks a little bit more natural. And we're done. How sweet is that? Super easy, minimal products, and fast, fast, fast. And you can put 30, 40, even 100 roses on your cake. It doesn't weigh your cake down like sugar roses do. I hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy. Bye.